has with his Father. Okay? The quote from Thoreau that begins chapter 12, rather than love, than money, than fame, give me truth. He really espouses truth without compromise, without cost. And the character of Chris McCandless has this almost obsession with what he believes is an ethical way to be. And so he believes actually he's right to sort of escape in the way that he does, because he's holding himself to this, fantastic, or maybe this moral code that's perhaps divorced a little bit from reality. The second quote, and these little quotes, some of y'all have mentioned them in your writings. These are called epigrams. I think some of us are at least in agreement that Krakauer uses them really effectively in this book. The second quote, for children are innocent and love justice, while most of us are wicked and naturally prefer mercy, is, I think, a great quote about the problem of this book. And in my, like I said, my relationship with my own children, and my relationship with my stepchildren, and my relationship with young people I've met through my job, is I think that some of us can relate to the anger towards the parental authority. Some of us have had tense relationships, and I think anyone's going to endorse taking it to the extreme. We're not going to go out and sort of, advertise or promote taking it to the extreme that Chris does, but hopefully we can at least see some of it. Some of the things that struck me for today's reading was, despite all this, is the admiration that Chris's parents had for him. They look back at him, and they're not like, that jerk, that selfish jerk. I mean, some people who have read this text, their reaction is, that selfish jerk, right? But on page 120, the father is remembering him as someone who would have made a great CIA agent. I thought that was kind of funny. And I think Walt probably thought it was kind of funny, so he has to insist, I'm serious. This is on the top of page 120. I know guys who work for the CIA. He told us what he thought we needed to know and nothing more. He was that way about everything. Some people are of the loose lips, sink ships variety. They like to tell everything. They broadcast it on Facebook. And come heck or high water, the world's going to know. And if you get in trouble for it later, what you posted on Facebook, well, so be it. I'm an open book. I have nothing to hide. Come and read my open book. And some people are very selective about who they share information with. They're very secret, or they protect people's privacy. I mean, for some people, it's just an issue of discretion or privacy. It's not like I'm a liar or I'm hiding anything for you, but not everybody needs to post their whole life on Facebook or whatever, be in the locker room and tell all the details. Maybe some people would rather not hear the details. Back in the day when I was young, we had locker rooms instead of Facebook for those kind of moments. Anyway, so he's angry, he's upset, he's guilty, he's hurt, he sees guilt and hurt. And the quote I chose to begin today's talk was on page 122, children can be harsh judges when it comes to the parents. This is especially true in Chris's case. Krakauer is quick to point out, though, in the very next paragraph on page 122, that, by the way, Chris does not hold up his literary icons to moral code. Good thing most of our literary icons, a lot of our literary icons in the 20th century didn't live a very astutely moral life, so it's a good thing we don't. Writers like to be bad boys, and so we're looking at the fact that the likes of Jack London and other great writers, they tend to get drunk and cheat on their girlfriends, is basically what Krakauer is saying in the middle of page 122. These guys are bad boys, but let's not hold them up as any role models, unless being hopelessly drunk and cheating on your girlfriends is what we want to hold up as our moral code. And then the next page, on page 123, we get a glimpse of Chris as a college student. He was the star for the college newspaper, and it's interesting. You can't really politicize Chris McCandless too much. If not, he's kind of an independent thinker. He's a free thinker. I might argue he's a bit of an anarchist, meaning he doesn't believe in government, but he's not a Republican or a Democrat. Though it does say he was part of a Republican group. His theories that and this is why I use the word anarchist on page 123, that according to Krakauer is out of Thoreau's civil disobedience. The best government is the one that governs the least. But he was very critical of people in power. So his critique of authority wasn't just of his parents, it was of everybody that he got to write about in his column in the college paper, which the Emery Wheel, which we learn about on page 123. Even before the final excursion, he had a habit of not contacting people. It says on the bottom of page 124, on one of his previous road trips, Chris seldom and living away at college, Chris seldom contacted his parents. And then I wrote, underlined, and I marked it up in the column in the margins. He had no phone. I mean, 1990 isn't ancient history, but that's how far we've come. Most of y'all got your phone probably in middle school or high school, at least, or at least when you came off to college. I have met a few people at Tech whose parents refused to let them have a phone. I'm not going to embarrass anyone. I hope all of you have your own phone. But I mean, that's a custom we accept in society today, that everyone has a phone that they have with them at all times. So mom can contact you when she needs to. Dad can contact you. And so we review again some of the details of his escape. Yeah? Are you hot? Yeah, anyone on the aisle, if you don't mind to help Slade out. He's busting a sweat over there. So chapter 13 on page 127 continues a little bit more background into the family. I think it's really helpful that we contrast Chris with his sister. Yeah, she rebelled back in the day, but she made her peace with her parents, and she became a workaholic businesswoman, just like mom and dad, and she becomes very successful. It's pretty painful, but Krakauer narrates the events surrounding Corinne discovering about her brother's death in the fall of 1992. And so we're with Corinne and her husband as they discover what happened to Chris. And Krakauer makes an excuse or an apology or something at the end of this chapter on page 132, where he writes on the bottom of the next to the last paragraph, "Such bereavement witnessed at close range makes even the most eloquent apologia for high-risk activities ring fatuous and hollow." And right on the heels of that disclaimer, if you will, on page 132, Krakauer takes us on his own trip. I love reading about Krakauer's own trip. I'm glad he permitted us this indulgence, because this is really, and this is why this is such a good book, and when you go see when we watch the movie next week, this is Jon Krakauer's story a little bit. I mean, there's a lot about Jon Krakauer, why he had to write this book. You'll learn a little bit about from me, if you'll permit me, on Friday, about why I had to teach this book. Sean Penn had to make this movie because there's a little bit of Sean Penn. I don't know how many of you, and not just the guys in the room, but men and women alike, there's a little bit of that adventurous spirit in us. We can relate to this guy. But some of us find his personality so annoying that we can't relate to him. We can understand why the book's an interesting book to read, but we can't really go there as far as having much sympathy for the protagonist, if you will, of the text. And so I'll hear more about it on your next blog, and I'll also hear about it on your papers if you choose to write your papers.